Go ahead. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll begin with a roll call vote, or roll call attendance, please.
Michelle Bateman. Here. Tom Cook.
Here.
Angel Faulkner. Here. Teresa Galvin. Donna Gustafson. Here. Mallory Highfield. Here. Carla Kinsey. Here. Michael Marshall.
Here.
Karen Martinez. Here. Brian Schimmel. Mariana Valenzuela. Here. Mayor Wenzel. Here. And Chair Thomas.
Present. Thank you very much.
Teresa online,
I just want to see, do we know whether Teresa was planning to join us?
Teresa is on Zoom.
Great. Let's make sure she's able to hear us okay.
Teresa, can you hear us all right?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any public comment that has been supplied in advance of the meeting, Jamie?
I was not provided with any written public comment, and there is nobody online with their hand raised.
We'll move on then. Consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve our consent agenda, which at this point is only the meeting minutes from May 20th?
So moved.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes as currently written, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. It's approved. By the way, I thought you did an excellent job on those minutes. All right, are there any additions or deletions to our agenda items for tonight?
there are no additions or deletions.
Let's move on to the discussion. E1, carryover from our last meeting. Time for budget committee members to provide feedback on the analysis tools and methods that the city is providing for us. I wouldn't mind starting off that and encourage anyone else to jump in as you see fit. The way I like to approach analyzing a budget, the city's budget, is for each of the major funds to look at a historical record of how things have progressed over the last few years, how we did actuals versus budget for the preceding year, and how we're looking for the current year. And all of that information is available to us. I also pay very close attention to beginning and ending fund balances. I'm looking for outliers. I'm looking for something that doesn't look right. I'm looking for a fund balance that's too high or too low. I'm looking for expenditures that jump way up or way low, something along those lines. And I don't believe we currently have fund balances readily available on a fund by fund basis, not that I've discovered so far looking through the materials. So that would be one request I would make, is so that as we're considering, say, the general fund police section, that we could see beginning and ending fund balances, both historical and current. Another ask that I would make is if there is a portion of the budget message that applies to that fund, if it could be repeated in that report so that I don't have to flip back and forth to find if there's a budget message that pertains to a particular fund. But those are the things that I do and what I would appreciate. Does anybody else have any thing they'd like to share, how they analyze, what would be helpful to them?
Here's the tool that's used as a kind of
Have a what?
pivot, like to create pivot tables.
That one probably doesn't. Since it's a report, it's not an actual Excel file.
If I understand right, Paul, there's a series of reports that have been created that we can just select and look at.
Yeah.
And we can look at the raw budget itself and look at any given fund and drill
Any
down.
given line item.
right, any given line item drilled down, but we as committee members don't have a way to create a specific report beyond what you have provided for us. Is that correct?
Probably not out of OpenGov. Because the OpenGov, I mean, it's online, so it's available to everybody, so it's. We can look to see if there's additional tools. I think they've come out with an updated version for next year. You know, there's one thing Sal and I have been talking about is putting how to put more reports out there with these, that may be more useful to the budget committee. So that's one thing we're going to look at. The off time between budget years is how to make more reports available, and you still might be able to make do a pivot table on it, because it's just a report in that format. So it's,
Is there a specific pivot that you wish was available?
No, just a general push out. I'm not familiar enough with budget apparatus.
It's interesting, this year I had the opportunity to serve on both the school district and the city's budget committee. And so I've gone through the process for both organizations now. Comparing and contrasting how they're done is an interesting exercise. The school district's approach is to give you a written big book with lots and lots and lots of information sliced many different ways. And, wait for committee members to pose questions and then try and address those questions. And of course, our method here is not a big fat book, lots and lots and lots and lots of things, but key reports that are useful. And we'll spend a lot more time listening to Paul walk us through the funds than the district does. I like this system because it gives us a chance to ask questions as they're prompted and Paul goes through things. Yeah, any other thoughts, comments, suggestions on how this process could be better for you to do the job that you want to do in analyzing and reviewing this budget? Yes.
Was the budget message ever provided by PDF? I noticed there are a bunch of links to the budget message site, which isn't printable from the site. I tried on a couple of different computers. So one thing I like to do is like open the PDF so I can add comments or highlight.
we can make a note to make the budget message available by PDF.
That would be, yeah, I had to copy and paste it into Word and then remove a bunch of spaces. So
I
that
think the option is good to have it both in PDF and not, but the reason we have gone away from PDFs on the website is that you can't use Google Translate for other people who want to access it, and maybe need to switch their language.
Well, it won't be a PDF on the, budget document itself. What we do is send out sending out
Just for the
separate
budget.
PDF to the budget committee
Okay.
members. So they want to do that and make highlights and that.
That makes more sense. Thanks for clarifying. Sorry.
And we didn't get a chance to work on it this year because again, for a while, it was just Sally and I trying to do everything in finance. So we are going to look at adding OpenGov's got a capital improvement plan module. So we're gonna, during the off time, we're gonna look at getting that set up. So next year we'll get the capital improvement plan will be better tied to the budget document.
Anything else that anybody would like to know?
I would just say for myself, I liked that you can export the data into like a CSV format and then Excel, because I like to stare at numbers and do that. So I did like that piece and looked for just like large variances. I was able to, I feel like, back into some of that explanations in the budget message. So I would say I did the same thing where I went into Word to just kind of, be able to write myself some notes. So if there was a way just to export the message itself, that would be helpful.
Yeah, as you're going through whatever process you use, it's a great thing to capture the questions and comments and share them with Paul so that they can be addressed Because if you're asking, somebody probably would like to know also. It's a good thing.
I would like to request that if you, during this meeting, think about additional things that you may have found useful, not just reserved for this time, if you wouldn't mind emailing those to me, since I can compile those into my minutes, and that way it's not minutes, but it's following.
Great. Good suggestion. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item F. We have a few more funds to go through, and during this discussion period, there's no need to be recognized by the chair. Just saying out if you have a question or comment you'd like to make, it can be more efficient that way. And I don't have to keep an eye on you all.
My slides are much.
Well, I forgot to bring you the clicker, so I will act as your clicker.
All right.
All right.
Like it.
Thank you.
Okay, purpose tonight, discuss the length, basically what we just discussed is the first item. Then discuss remaining funds, then take any is there any more public comment on proposed budget before we get into the approval process. Then we'll look at approval of the proposed capital improvement plan. And then we'll start the approval process for the budget. Staff will discuss changes it's wants to make the proposed budget, and then we'll go through the committee approval process. So about 4 remaining funds. They're all fairly small. Next page, please. Community Enhancement Fund, the revenue for this, for the Community Enhancement Program Fund comes from a $1 per ton fee collected on solid waste, collected at the Forest Grove Transfer Station. That revenue is expected to be about $65,000 in each year biennium. Additionally, the city's been receiving an additional 50 cents per ton of what's called a community investment fee program that is charged at the transfer station. We expect to receive $32,500 each year and for the coming biennium. The CIF, we'll call the CIF Community Investment Fee Funds. We recommend that we don't use them until they're actually collected, because Waste Management has the option of not charging them at any time they want. If it's not decides not to charge that 50 cent fee tomorrow, they can turn it off and charge a much lower fee. So CIF funds, we recommend they don't get spent until they're collected, although we did budget to spend them, assuming we were going to get it in the next 2 years. We budgeted $116,500 for grants in the first year of the biennium, and $110,000 for grants in the second year of the biennium. But each of those totals for each of those years contains a $40,000 per year payment to the Chamber of Commerce for the second and third year of the 3-year community impact grant that they were awarded last year. And we've also moved the grants from the fall to the fall from the spring, and so we'll be starting the CEP grants process here in the coming months. CEP committee to meet this summer to set the number and amounts of grants available for the fall 2025 grant program. We're budgeted over the biennium to transfer $15,600 to the general fund. That's to help fund the staff time used to administer the CEP program. We can take up to 10% of the money collected, but we don't take that much. So that's that. Are there any questions on that one?
And with the CIG, since it's 2 more years, there's no impact with.
No. No, they'll get their, come July, they'll get their second payment July 1st of this year, then their third payment July 1 of 2026. That's on the contract reads. We just change when we do the other grants. And we'll have to figure out the transition to the new, if they're going to do another 3-year CIG, when that one runs out, you just have to figure out how to transition to it. Or maybe you may wait and get back on the same cycle as these grants, or that's the discussion that we have at a later date. But are committed, and those 40,000 that gets paid out before any of the grant funds are paid out. So if the revenue goes down, I contract those $40,000 are paid out before anything else is.
We have a timeline on the, like, the fall? I mean, do we have to, like, post it and you'll say? you have a timeline?
Stephanie and I developed a schedule for it. I mean, it's something Stephanie enjoys kind of have taken over that, kind of do that program now. So I think they've got a schedule worked out.
Yeah, we typically have the CEP committee work session on July 14th.
Okay.
And then the grant process will kind of flow from there after there's a consensus on the grants. And so
Okay.
Capital Improvement Excise Tax Fund, that comes from the fee you see on your utility bill, that $3 per month. CIP excise tax, that's what funds this fund. Current fees, $3 per month. 90% of the revenue is dedicated by ordinance to public safety. The other 10% can be used for general purposes. And we expect to collect about $813,000 in CEP excise taxes over the next 2 years. Specified capital outlay projects for the coming biennium, $8,900 for the remodel of the fire department lobby, which will be paid 50% by the Forestboro Rural Fire District. $12,300 for command central evidence module for the police, not the police, the police department's body worn camera system. And $85,000 to replace the carousel in Rogers Park. It never really worked from the beginning. Worked very well since it was installed. And $9,500 to upgrade the aquatic center's camera system to cover more area outside the aquatic center. Right now, most of the cameras are just internal. They have nothing covering the parking lots. Parking lot occasionally do have issues out in the parking lot, so they like some cameras out there. And transfers totaling almost $750,000, $357,660 to the equipment fund for police vehicles. $388,000 transfer over the 2 years to the fire equipment replacement fund for fire vehicles. Questions? Next slide. I just want to talk public arts funds. You can see what it is. Revenue from this fund comes from mostly from funds raised. The Public Arts Commission mostly from meet the artist standards and interest in on those funds. City's all staff's involvement is process is limited to receiving and depositing funds from the Public Arts Commission after the dinners and then paying the expenses the PAC authorizes. There are a few small expenditures each year. The expenditures are approved by the Public Arts Commission since it's their money. There's roughly, you see there's about $16,000 currently in that fund. So that's how much money they have available for the Public Arts Commission to spend out of the Public Arts Fund.
So there's no general fund.
No general fund money goes here. We don't collect any money from them for processing stuff because it's really, since having been the dinners, there haven't really been a lot of processing. And there's been a couple of small payments out that don't take any time, so we haven't worried. We don't worry about a little bit of staff time we've been spending on it.
When we talked about giving a 1-year organization on these fundraising events, was that a work session or a council?
When the council approved
We had the work session,
or
and then it
regular
came
meeting.
as a resolution, not yesterday's meeting, but the two.
Approving the fundraising. Okay, one more small fund, which we rarely ever talk about, it's the Library Endowment Fund. This fund has a restricted balance of a little over $41,000 from the sale of the old Rogers Library building, which cannot be spent, only you can spend the interest earning on those funds, and occasionally we get state donations to the library, which are put into this fund. This fiscal year, we received a donation of just a little over almost $52,000 from an estate, and the library's going to be using that donated money for general improvement projects, mostly in the children's area.
So the restricted balance,
$41,187
everything else that comes in can be
spent.
spent.
Yes. part of the restriction on the, when they sold the library, they gave money to the city that those funds could not be spent on the art. Those are all the funds that we have covered. If somebody has any questions on anything else we didn't cover,
I have one question about the high school trails fund, and that's which trails are we maintaining with those monies?
we don't, depends, we don't specifically use those funds to potentially maintain any trails. When we spent the money in the past, we combined the trail system fund money plus the bike path money, and we've been taking the Highway 47 bike path, which is south of Pacific, which is our responsibility. And we started at B Street, and we've been over time slowly repaving that with concrete. So that's what we've used, and have used most of that money for, when we've collected it.
Wait, Street Trail funded separately. That's that metro fingerprint product too, I think.
Well, the B Street Trail we built and we maintain it, but it's not, it's, so the Parks Fund maintains it. Trail system fund money, if they wanted to use payments on that trail, would be available for that.
So if they wanted to like get rid of all the routes that are a real problem in the Eastern Trail, they could use the funds from the trail.
Okay,
Jennifer, what portion of the trail are you finding
Um,
tree roots? Is it on the highway side or?
other side of the curb
It's
side.
on our side.
It's from, you know where the gravel parking area
Yeah,
is?
yeah,
From there heading south.
south, okay,
And
toward the
yeah,
highway.
Right until you, not quite to where the river is.
Where the, yeah, where Gales Creek is.
Yeah.
All right.
That's also the part that's underwater.
Yeah,
Here,
Yes.
right?
yeah, that's the part that floods every year.
Unfortunate, but the roots that are growing through there are dangerous. Some of them
Yes.
have to crash.
There's a long section in, I run that trail all the time. And if you, if the parks does consider addressing that, it might also be worth looking into lifting a section so that it's usable more time of the year. Their Springwater Trail is lifted in some places over some wetland area. It's obviously a little bit more expensive to do it that way, but a little bit more durable, you're not dealing with the roots intrusion and also getting,
That area of the trail, it does flood every year, and we have to come back and we have to sweep the mud off when
Yeah.
it dries, and it's.
But your metro is resisted.
Well, and I
What's
wonder
the
if
story?
it's because of the flow of the water. I think there was an issue associated with that you couldn't block it.
They didn't want to risk damming the water up. So,
Yeah.
because we actually talked about when we were building, and I remember Tom Gamble was talking about, tried to see if we could get the trail raised. Clean Water Services said can't raise the trail up.
because they're worried about the trees becoming a dam,
Mhm.
which has actually already happened at
It has.
Otis Crossing.
It has.
There's
Well,
a
where the
huge
bridge
dam
comes
right
together
there.
right there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, at least I know that it's parks that will have to make the decision about what to do. Thank you. Any other questions about any of the other funds? Let's move to item G, which is public comment on the proposed budget. The meeting is now open for public comment on the fiscal year 2025-2027 proposed budget. Is there anybody in Zoom land at this point, Jamie?
Nobody in Zoom land with public comment.
Are you wish to make public comment?
Guess in the short 5 months or so entering this space, it's the two areas that concern me most. One is the police facility as it passed and what funds are eligible to be away from other projects. The city's working on that. And the other is the parks maintenance. And with all the increased real estate we've happened in stop or close. until we can. I don't know, the crossover between Parks Capital and Facility Capital, there's a crossover there that hampers our ability to improve the parks experience.
And the Parks SDC funds can only be used for capital, they can't be used for maintenance. That's why when we were talking about starting the Parks Master Plan update this fiscal year, and trying to get it done in 2 years, and we kind of, so we're just about to do some improvements at Knott Ridge Park where the parts, the stuff has been ordered. Then the only other park we're gonna do before the Parks Master Plan is complete is the East Side Park. And part of what we're looking at during the Parks Master Plan is if we're going to be adding facilities, like we're gonna be building tile, we're gonna be doing the loop trail, we're gonna be doing the other stuff. What is the staff, what are the staff maintenance, what staff is needed to maintain those new facilities, how much staff will take. And the council and the budget committee can say, okay, it's going to, we build this, we're gonna need 2 or 3 more park staff to do everything we're talking about. Where does the money come from? And if there is money to maintain, then it's a decision that we want to go ahead and build those or not. Exciting to build them, but it's not exciting to build them, we can't maintain it. So that's what the Parks Master Plan is kind of designed to do, is to sort of look at what we're gonna build, what it's gonna take to keep, what it's gonna take to maintain those facilities.
I'd like to maybe add to that. I know one of the council objectives was to look at parks maintenance staffing and what those metrics are associated with how many staff, how many FTEs do you need for what your facilities are. And I want to compliment Director Lane. She and Tom Martin, supervisor for parks, they did start digging into this. And when I say kind of digging into it, I mean calling up other cities, talking to other superintendents, finding out how many acres of park, what type of facilities they have, how many FTEs they have. They started building some kind of comparative metrics associated with it. And what they really kind of found out is it's a little more complex than they, I think, figured, because depending on the size of the park, the number of amenities in the park, the type of play structure in the park, the age of the park, there's a lot of kind of factors that go into what the maintenance component is. And then one of the other big factors that's a little bit harder to measure is what level of service do you want? The level of service in some parks is higher than in other parks. I'm not talking about Forest Grove now, I'm just talking about kind of in general. One thing that I think Director Lane is really looking at doing and putting some energy toward is reviewing all of the maintenance that's being done right now and finding out if there is areas that are either seldom used or in some cases never used. And if there's maintenance techniques that we might be able to employ on those that require less maintenance. And in doing so, we can deploy that resource somewhere else. I'll give you an example. There's a couple areas that are not used that may be a bioswale that may be mowed on an X basis. And it raises the question kind of, nobody uses it. There's no amenities. It's public, but it's not publicly used. It kind of raises the question, okay, is there a more efficient way to maybe maintain that than what the maintenance requirement is right now? And if so, and if you decrease the maintenance, what does that look like? And if you deploy that maintenance somewhere else, what does that look like? So I think those questions are kind of being asked and trying to, the other thing we're trying to keep in mind is the East Side Park. So those funds have been appropriated. That design is being to be redone because the tree fell down. But there's an active effort to design that park so that the maintenance requirement is within existing needs, so to speak. If it does require extra means, we'll be coming right back to council because that maintenance component has to follow that capital. It really does. And I think what Paul was alluding to in the master plan is really trying to make that one of not just kind of a theme, but also try to get some metrics to that. So that when staff or the community does talk about a capital project associated with a park, whether it's tile, loop trail, Council Creek, that we can also give you in the public a pretty accurate expectation of what the maintenance requirement would be, how much it would cost, and what the level of service. We're not quite there yet, but I think we're making
Yeah, I was gonna say, what about the police facility?
So
Well,
let's
I
let's
know
talk
you're- I
about
know
it,
you're
yeah.
working on
So here's what we've done with the police facility. Pursuant to, the last budget committee, we asked Andrew Leslie, who's our facility supervisor, to go back and look at the police facility. And I'll just kind of tell you what we've learned over the past week or so. One is we did do some HVAC improvements last summer. So last summer, what we saw some not good working conditions. And then for our officers, just flat out not good working conditions. We added some, and I'm not an HVAC expert, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, I'm not, but we did add some controls to the system so that you can have it work better. We fixed some tubes and stuff, I don't know. And anyways, we spent about $130,000 on it and it worked better. Okay, it's still an older building. And so apparently if you have control in that room and you turn that up because it's too warm, that room will be freezing and this room will be warm. And so there's still kind of some self-regulation. We see the same thing in the older portion of City Hall. Same thing, Jamie's office will be hot and cold and mine will be exactly the opposite. So we try to keep our doors open and, hey, so there's still some of those issues. The other thing we found out, and this complicates this a little bit, is the library and the police facility, the central systems, water, I want to make sure I get this right because I got corrected today. HVAC, water, HVAC, emergency electricity, but not electricity, and storm, sewer are all connected. So when you walk between the library and the police facility, that common area right there, there's literally a vault that has the control systems for both buildings. So if you look to do something to police, then it might have an impact on the library. And so one of the questions that kind of comes up is, depending on what type of improvement you want to make to the police building, do you end up trying to separate whatever that system is? In talking with Andrew, the complaints from our officers, they did go down after the improvements were made. Could also probably argue that the summer was getting to a close after the improvements were made. And so
We'll find out in a month.
I'm not suggesting that it's all fixed. But I think it is a better working environment than what it was. I have asked Andrew the question, and Andrew is working with the chief about, are there some short-term improvements that need to be made and that make it, that is either a concern of the officers from a heat, cold, working conditions, circulation perspective, because also you want to make sure the air is circulating. And if so, what does that look like? And he's still working on it. We don't have an answer for that quite yet. He thinks he may be able to add more controls in other offices to help regulate the temperature a little better using the existing system. But to redo the entire HVAC system and to separate that system is a very expensive proposition. I don't know that he gave us a number, but I do know that the number to separate the two facilities and have two control systems for each is about $450,000. So if you do a whole new HVAC system, I'm not sure what that would cost.
Yeah, it's mostly the HVAC controls that are doing it.
It's the controls.
It's not the system itself, it's the controls from the systems. And Andrew was always a little leery about, so is the HVAC person. If you try to take, like a lot of the police and City Hall, like one thermostat controls 3 areas, 3 offices, or sometimes 2 offices in an open area. It gets quite expensive when you try to put 3 controls in instead of that one, and all the balancing and everything else that you have to do. So Andrew's always been a little leery about changing the system to add more controls.
I think what that would end up being, Councilor Schimmel, is once Andrew gets an answer to that, I think we're gonna have to sit down with the council and kind of talk about, kind of next steps about the police facility. And that can be part of that conversation about, depending on what the council may decide to do with respect to a potential ballot, with regard to short-term improvements, with regard to even kind of the capacity for those types of improvements. So hope that's more information. That's a little more information than we had last time. So
Does he have Has the notion of modular expansion, in some of the city-owned properties been considered?
We haven't talked about that yet, Jennifer. I think that would require also a conversation about what functions would be pulled out of the building and then what would be expanded in the building. In some cases, the spaces are far deficient. They're just not even close to big enough. Evidence being one. You could argue that the officer briefing room is very small. There's no separate cubicles. It's all shared. Yeah, I mean, so I think we can look at that. I know we could look at it, but that's a little bit longer conversation. Yeah. I think that's gonna have some contingencies about what's the timeline, what's the horizon,
Security issues of the law.
security issues associated with it, so. Yeah, we already are using different places for evidence. The evidence is not just in the building itself. And that does have to be a secure facility anytime you have evidence.
Any other questions or discussion?
Question. I apologize, I missed 2 meetings. They were known about before I joined, but so this probably was discussed in like a meeting or 2 ago. I didn't get a chance to watch the video, so I'm gonna ask anyway. What was the justification for the non-represented getting a higher cost of living increase than the union represented workers?
The, asked me when they negotiated the contract 3 years ago, they negotiated CPI for this year, which is either 2.6 or 2.7, depending on who you talk to, so we gave them 2.7. We talked about the non-represented COLAs, and it's not just upper management, there's also people with different levels of non-represented. And we talked about what level of increase we would give, and we looked at our HR person, kind of talked to other cities about what were other cities giving. Some cities were giving more than the 3%. One thing we look at is we trying to stay within the market. The council has a rule of plus or minus 5% of the market, but we've been trying to more locate it around right at market more recently. And so we looked at towards what other cities were giving, because if they're giving 4 or 4+% COLA increases and we're doing like say 2.7 or 2.5, we know when we do the next salary survey, we're going to be behind the market again. So we didn't going all the way up to what some of the other cities were doing, but we tried to a little higher on that, so we're not so far behind and have to make a lot of market adjustments when we got there. And next time we do, say, ask me, this is the last year of their contract, so next spring when we start negotiations with them, we will do a market salary survey for them, see where they are in the market comparable to their positions, and if we need to do, say, spot adjustments for some of the positions to get them back to market, we do that, similar to what we do for the non-rep. So we just gave the non-rep a slightly higher increase, try to keep us somewhat closer to that market. And the first year, we're going to give the 3%. We told the committee next year, we've also got a 3% increase next year from the comp plan, but we told the committee we were going to take a look at what the actual CPI is at the end of this year. And so let's say the CPI is down around 1-2%, or plus around there, we may come back and propose a lower non-represented COLA next year than the 3% we have from there for the second year. So the 3% for the second year is in there, but it's not fixed. We're going to take a look at what the conditions are at that point.
The only thing I would add, is it Raquel or Rachel?
Rochelle.
Rochelle? Okay, sorry. The only thing I would add, Rochelle, is when Paul mentioned the spot adjustment, when we do the survey of comparable cities, the spot adjustment is to get whatever that position may be if it's out of market. The spot is to get it back into market, and that doesn't count the CPI increase or the full increase. So that would be in addition, for example. So if a position, say, is 5% out of the market and there's a 5% spot to get it back into the market, and then there's a 3% COLA on top, in that particular position, after the salary adjustment is done, as part of that bargaining, that position would actually see an 8% increase in the first year. And then whatever is negotiated in the contract would be for the subsequent 2 years. So I hope that just adding to what Paul mentioned.
When you're comparing the COLA increase for non-represented our neighboring cities, are you looking at the increase for their union as well? Because like, for example, Cornelius, if they're possibly an increase for non-represented is 3%, that's higher than the, what do you call it, CPI? But they're giving the same percentage to union. So
When we do the union contract, well, like I said, we've got 4 unions. So like when we did the ASME contract, which is probably the closest to some similar positions at Cornelius. Our HR people, they will look at what the prior calls have been for those other cities with their relatable contract positions. So they'll see what those raises have been in prior years for the other cities unions, so they can see how they've been trending as well. So.
but you're comparing it to the increase to what I'm asking, because
Yeah,
there's a disparity of 2.7% of an 80,000 a year is gonna be greater than 2.7% of 50 grand a year. So there's already a disparity in wages there. So if you're also adding extra percentage on top of that, then the disparity grows. So if other neighboring cities are increasing by 3 or 4%, but they're also giving 3 or 4% to their union, is it a fair comparison? Because they might have the equity piece that I feel is missing. from this.
not sure I understand.
The
the question.
union's a little
So-
trickier because the union will, I mean, for example, this increase they're getting now, the union negotiated
Right,
2-3 years ago.
2 or 3 years.
I mean, so that 2 points, that CPI for that year was locked in as part of the negotiations for that several years ago. Non-rep, we don't say for the next 3 years, we're going to get these kind of increases. We take it by year. Typically, police, fire and ASBE, police, fire, and our electric union workers tend to get higher increases than the non-rep and what ASBE does, because that's just the markets that they're in. You have to pay, you have to keep up with their comparable markets, and their salaries are increasing at a faster rate. As we look at management, because we want to keep employees. We've had a fair number of employees jump over to Hillsborough because they pay significantly more than we do. And so it's, we look at things of that nature because we want to try to keep employees. It's time consuming and expensive to retrain employees on your system when they leave. So, I mean, we do compare the union to the union. We compare the non-rep positions. And we'll also compare, some cities don't have unions, so we'll compare the non-represented positions at those cities to our union positions at their comparable positions. So we don't always just, so, like I said, in Hillsborough, we have a lot of non-union. Their library is union, but I think everybody else is non-union. So they're one of our comparators. They generally the highest ones. So the more looking at the market median, they pretty much fall off right away. So we do try to take a fairly comprehensive look at.
The only thing I would add, Rochelle, is when we do the comparisons for the positions, it's by the position. So when we look at other comps, whether it's Cornelius, whether it's Tualatin, Haggard, et cetera, it's by whatever that position is, and we try to find the most comparable like position in the other municipalities. If that makes sense. So if it's an administrative specialist, then we compare it to other administrative specialists. We try to make sure there's alignment on the job duties, responsibilities, and then that's what's used as a comparison for that position. And I was mentioning kind of the spot and the COLA, that's both that happens during the negotiation, in this case, for represented employee. For non-rep, we do that about once every 3 years, which is on pretty much the same cycle, sometimes a little less for non-rep as it is for representative, because typically the represented contracts are about 3 years, sometimes 2 years, but typically 3 years. But every time we do a contract like that, that's when we do that broad-based comparison. But we don't do that for unrep every year. We do that every 3 years. So I hope that just adds more.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know that I agree with what you just said, but I understand
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from. A 3% raise for someone making $12,000 a month is a much different increase than a 2%, 2.7% increase for somebody making around $5,000 a month. it is a difference, but the reality is we try to pay what the market, somewhere around where the market's paying, and so like Jesse says, we have to look at each individual position. It's just unfortunate fact of the market for us.
When was the last time Forrest go to the classification study?
I believe that's what we do every 3 years. I think
Yeah.
that's what we call it.
Yeah, we call it class comp study every 3 years, yeah.
If I was using the wrong terminology, I didn't mean to.
No, HR does it for every 3 years. They do a class comp study.
Every time we negotiate a contract, that's what we start
Yeah.
with, is the class of comp study.
Because we have about 15 cities that we compare ourselves to for ASME and for the non-represented employees. We go down to about 50% of our size and double our size is what we try to aim for. That's kind of what the HR professionals, the contracts with major professionals, the class comp study, that's about the range that they'll look for. The arbitrators looking at the arbitration for any unions that may be, they can't strike. That's kind of the range the arbitrators sometimes look for cities, for agencies or some cities of similar size.
Is the CIP approval process first?
Yeah, and the CIP, I didn't check, the CIP should be in the budget book now. It should be the same document you got last week, corrected a little bit and the better pagination. We're gonna improve a little bit when the adopted budget comes out. We just didn't get time to put all the pictures and everything in it this year, so.
So we're gonna move to agenda item H. There's some formalities that we have to observe here, but there are also opportunities for budget committee members to make motions to modify or change things. For example, if you felt strongly, or Joe, that you would like to make a motion to adjust some of those compensation issues, there will be an opportunity that you could do that. Any proposal needs to be seconded, discussed, and then a vote will be taken. So I think the first thing we need to do is work on our CAP approval process.
Yeah, we're just approving the CIP plan. I'll do that. Do you have somebody, do you have the other motions? Let me make sure she got the right, let me make sure.
Jamie, you can turn off screen share.
Thank you. He said not yet, so I just was waiting.
Yeah, so right now, we're just gonna do the top motion here. You can do them here. URA. All you need right now.
Mayor Winslow is going to be making some motions for us.
So I just like watch the rest of my kids.
First one will be the capital improvement.
Chair, I move to approve the capital improvement program for fiscal year 2025 through year 2030. That's through multiple motions.
That's the first motion. That's all you need to do.
Yeah,
And we'll need a second for that.
second.
Right. At this point, discuss any changes or modifications that anyone would like to make to the CIP capital improvement program. Is there any discussion? This motion that's on the table. Seeing none. Voting at this point on that first motion.
Yeah, we'll vote that one.
All right, so we will now take a vote on the capital improvement program. Approval. And, we need to roll call.
You know, voice vote.
Let's go voice vote on this. All in favor of approving the capital improvement program as currently outlined, please say aye.
Aye.
Any who are opposed? The motion carries.
Okay, we go back to the slide presentation. And next, we're gonna move the process to approve the overall proposed budget. So what, then, I thought I'd give everybody this so they can see the process we're using. Staff staff has changes it wants to propose to the budget, so we're going to explain those proposals, and we've already reflected those changes in the proposed budget totals, which we hand out. But if you want to take any of them off the table, we can do that, not a problem. Motion needs to be on the table. We need a motion on the table to propose and discuss any changes. So the initial motion will start the discussion. So I'll ask for a motion in a second, but we will not vote on the motion. This is the opportunity for discussion or for changes to the proposed budget to be introduced. Committee members may make motions to amend the proposed budget. If a change is suggested, you need a motion in a second. It will followed by a discussion and a vote on that changed motion only. Then after all the changed motions have been considered, Chair will ask staff for the amended total incorporates the approved motions. And I ask for a motion to have the original motion amended to reflect the new total and the revised expenditure summary, and then vote on that motion. So that's the process we'll go through on approving the budget. So
Right.
there's about 6 fairly quick slides on staff changes there. So next page. General fund, we got 3 changes in the general fund. One, we want to add $30,000 professional services placeholder for outreach and polling on the police facility. This facility bond, we want to, we assume at this point in time it's not going to pass due to the margin and not enough votes probably to turn it around. So we want to put placeholder on, have some discussion with the council to see if they want to have staff do some outreach or do some polling potentially on why the bond didn't pass. So then we also want to add $50,000 in recruiting as a placeholder for recruiting assistance and potential relocation assistance, as the city will be recruiting for 3 senior management positions, 1 police chief, 2 assistant city manager, and 3 finance directors. So it's a lot of work for HR to do in a very limited amount of time. And the advertising expenses for the 3 positions, I think we're going to try to advertise broadly all over. And then we hire a replacement firm. I mean, you hire a replacement for the police chief, they would probably eat up, that placement would probably eat up half of that $50,000 alone. So we've done a lot of this department head recruiting ourselves in the past. Back when we hired Jesse, we did an internal process to hire him. So take that for what's
Wow.
You knew that was coming. And then on the library, little clerk error, I forgot to take out the $17,768 of pool 2 money, capital outlay that was mistakenly not removed when the budget was prepared for the second year of the bid, so I took that out. And so how to keep the general, that will increase the total fund general fund appropriations to $61,823,575. To keep the budget balanced, we will lower unappropriated any fund balance by $62,232. So are there any questions on these proposed general fund changes?
I just wanted to like maybe add to what Paul was saying. These are like placeholders, but you know, the decision about all of it will happen during a work session, right? So it just doesn't say like, hey, just in case, you know, we want to figure, if we want to, why did we have a work session on next steps with the police station, for example? If there's like consensus to do polling or to do something, then we have to fund. It's not, there's been no policy consensus or work saying we're doing. Either, you know, 30,000 or the 50,000, it's literally a placeholder in case we choose to do that as a council. So I just want to be.
There still needs to be a policy decision associated with it. Yes.
Yeah. If we spend it, if not, it just rolls over into the beginning fund balance for the next plan.
Likewise, if the recruiting expenses turn out to be higher than $50,000, the council can appropriate those. And we'll adjust the ending fund balance.
Yeah, I think you have to do budget amendment.
Yeah. What we do on, if it goes over, what I would do on that is we since it's in administrative services, because we try to balance, see if we can balance other budget line items, and so if other budget line items haven't spent as much, we'll balance that way. We'll balance them that way as well, which happens sometimes. So. Next page. Light and Power Fund. I'm going to add $36,000 of professional services to fund GIS services and cloud system management that we didn't include in the proposed budget. We paid those out of ARPA, so they just kind of slipped out of our mind when we were preparing the proposed budget, to be honest with you. In the capital outlay, we want to add $1,340,000, $900,000 for the community solar project funded by a federal grant, $440,000 from the Oregon Department of Energy grant for burying the overhead power lines in wildlife prone areas. This will increase the total appropriation of light power to $63,834,545. We'll increase revenue line items to cover the charges. I looked at interest income. I think I was probably a little under in interest income, so I'm going to budget the interest income to cover the $36,000 for the professional services, and we'll put the grant revenue in the budget to cover the grant expenditures. Water fund and sewer fund are essentially the same thing after adding $24,000 in each of those to fund GIS services, the cloud system management that were not included in the proposed budget. And we'll increase the interest income in both of those as well to cover those professional services increases. Information system fund, the white power shouldn't be up there, don't worry about that. I did this at the very end, and I copied it over, pasted it, forgot to delete it. We'll delete it, we'll correct that. Information system fund, I just wanted to add more money for equipment replacement. We had $60,000 in small equipment to budget to more funds to replace additional desktops, laptop, mobile data terminals, and other small equipment. Hearing more reports of aging equipment starting to have issues. I mean, some people talked about it, I'm hearing from other departments, so it's apparent we need to replace some of the aging equipment, which we haven't replaced as scheduled due to limited IT staff over the past few years. We just haven't had the bandwidth to get some of the equipment replaced, and so since it wasn't giving any problems, it didn't become IT's priority, but now we're starting to have issues with it. And then in the capital outlay equipment, I also want to add $60,000 for the replacement of larger equipment such as the phone system, storage arrays, or servers. That equipment's aging. I'd like the flexibility for this funding because it's one of the first projects we're going to do with a new IT management vendor. Will be to review to see if the city continues to keep the servers and related equipment on site, or do we start moving some of that equipment to the cloud? And if the equipment's moved to the cloud, how's it moved to the cloud will be part of the discussion because there's various options on how you can move things out to the cloud. You can have your equipment hosted, or you can pay to be on somebody's server. So there's different options. So that we want to have the new vendor kind of go through, give us the information on potential options. And if we want to start moving out to the cloud on some stuff, I'd rather not spend a lot of money replacing expensive equipment right now. We need some of that resources to move some of this stuff out to the cloud. But we also want to, as the consultant said, there's pros and cons to each method. So we want to kind of evaluate the pros and the cons of doing it that way. So that will increase the information system fund appropriations to $1,552,600. We will reduce fund balance by $120,000 to $546,543 to keep the proposed information system fund budget balance. Page, transportation development tax fund. The TDT, as we talked about before, we budget to spend all the funds in this budget. So specific we'll include specific projects in the detail, with the remainder of the funds being listed as undesignated projects. So let's say during the year, staff wants to use some of the undesignated funds in the TDT fund for the fiscal year. Staff has to take a request to the council to spend the undesignated funds. They don't have to do a budget change. They just have to say, we've got $13 million of undesignated funds in here. We have a $1.5 million project. This is what it will do. Or we have approval to spend that money on that project. We also have to get the county's approval to spend TDT money, but we don't put any of this money in unappropriated fund balance in case something comes up. So 2 changes in the detail is we want to reduce the match for these safe routes to school grant from $1.6 million to $200,000. Basically, the project was double budgeted in this fund and the street fund. So we want to add a detail line for $75,000 match for the bus rapid transit project. As the council recently approved the local preference alternative that they were asked to approve, and will shortly be asked to approve the intergovernmental agreement, which will include the $75,000 match. Total appropriations in this budget will not change. Should be all there. Correct.
We're ready for our next motion then.
So,
So,
no, I guess I was some of those down over there in that direction.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
What?
Would like to do a motion?
Sure, and then while we're doing this, we'll have this out where we're talking about that.
Here, I move to approve expenditures for the fiscal year 2025. Excuse me, I'm gonna start over. Chair, I move to approve expenditures for the fiscal year 2024-2025 proposed budget in the amount of 160.
You got the wrong one.
Sorry.
I'll give you the wrong. I'll give you last year.
I was wondering, but then I was like, it's. I was gonna ask you, and then I was like, then I read this one. And I
I'll give you the
thought,
wrong one.
well, the one below it.
Right now.
Try again.
Setting me up, Paul, setting me up. All right, let's try that again for the 3rd time. Chair, I move to approve the expenditures for the fiscal year 2025-27 proposed biennial budget in the amount of $255 million. What? Wait, how do I do that? 1,700. Wait. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
$742.
I want a new job. I had read the other one and practiced it with the amount. Okay, so I'll start with, move to approve expenditures for fiscal year 2025 through 27 proposed annual budget in the amount of $255,001,742 and to establish the maximum expenditures for each fund as shown on fiscal year 2025-27 approved biennial budget expenditure summary by fund. Second.
We have a second.
This little chart, which is, sorry about all the small letters, but I want to get it on one page. This is essentially the expenditure summary by fund. Where you see a green highlight, that is a legal appropriation. Let's say, for example, take legislative and executive. They have personnel services, materials services, no capital outlay, and then they've got fiscal year 25-27 total program appropriations. So their total program appropriations of $1,614,455,000 is the legal appropriation for them, not either of the personnel or the materials and services. So, like I said, whenever you see a green highlight, that's the legal appropriation limit. And transfers, debt service, and contingencies are always budgeted separately from the personnel services, materials services, capital outlay. Then you'll see a column called total appropriations. Then you'll see unappropriated ending fund balance. We never appropriate any fund balance, obviously, since it's not appropriated. And then there's the total fund. And there's the total by fund. Near the bottom right-hand corner, that's where you get the $255,001,742.
There it is, budget. All right, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Let's see. So before we move forward, this is the opportunity for changes to the proposed budget to be introduced. Budget committee members can make a motion to amend the proposed budget, and you'll need a second. After which we will do discussion and take a vote on that change motion fully. Are there any changes anybody would like to make a motion for? Seems to be none. then we need to vote on the motion on the table. And we do a roll call.
Do a roll call.
We'll do a roll call next.
Michelle Bacon. Tom Cook,
Yes.
Counselor Falconer,
Yes.
Teresa Galvin,
Yes.
Counselor Gustafson,
Yes.
Mallory Highfield,
Yes.
Carla Kinsey,
Yes.
Counselor Marshall,
Yes.
Counselor Martinez,
Yes.
Counselor Schimmel.
Yes.
Counselor Valenzuela,
Yes.
Mayor Wetzel,
Yes.
and Chair Thomas.
Yes. All right, the motion carries unanimously.
Make the motion on taxes.
Ready for taxes?
Yeah, the final motions for the taxes, and we always ask the budget committee to levy the maximum tax rates they can, and that's how we build the budget.
Chair, I move to approve the fiscal year 2025-2026 and fiscal year 2026 and 27, a property tax rate of 3.9554 per $1,000 of assessed value for general fund property taxes for taxes levied by the city's permanent rate, and a property tax rate of $1.95 per 1,000 of assessed value for general fund property taxes for the third and fourth years of the 5-year local option levy expiring on June 30th, 2028.
Second.
Oh,
All right, we have a motion on the floor, it's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we will vote. And I think we need to do a roll call on this one too, correct? Roll call, please.
Michelle Bacon. Yes. Tom Cook,
Yes.
Counselor Falconer,
Yes.
Teresa Galvin,
Yes.
Counselor Gustafson,
yes.
Mallory Highfield,
Yes.
Carla Kinsey,
Yes.
Counselor Marshall,
Yes.
Counselor Martinez,
Yes.
Counselor Schimmel,
Yes.
Counselor Valenzuela,
Yes.
Mayor Wetzel,
Yes.
and Chair Thomas.
Yes. All right. That did be approved. Now, we're gonna make sure we have the right.
I do, I double checked. I'm not being pumped anymore by I had seen it earlier and I was like, oh, crap.
Okay, so
Did you go over anything with the URAs?
URA, there is no staff changes proposed to the URA budget, so it's what we propose on adoption. If you want to see the URA budget, I've got a copy of it here that kind of shows the legal appropriation limits. There's 2 legal appropriation limits. There's materials and services, $2,797,16, and debt service for $1,153,865.
Do we need to close this meeting?
yeah, I think we need to close this meeting.
Oh, yeah, we need to close that meeting, open budget, yes.
Yep. All right, I hereby adjourn the City of Forest Grove Budget Committee meeting, having accomplished all of our work. Thank you all very much for your time and energy and effort spent. Now, we need to open the renewal agency budget committee meeting. And I suppose we need to do a roll call.
Michelle Bateman? Yes. Tom
Here.
Cook?
Here.
Dr. Falconer?
Here.
Teresa Galvin?
Here.
Dr. Gustafson?
Here.
Mallory Highfield? Here. Carla Kinsey?
Here.
Dr. Marshall?
Here.
Dr. Martinez?
Here.
Dr. Schimmel?
Here.
Dr. Valenzuela?
Here.
URA Chair Wetzel? Here. And Committee Chair Thomas?
Here. The business at hand for this meeting is to make motions and approve and vote for the URA budget.
Chair, sorry, you have to go up to the, I'm gonna move that we approve the consent agenda.
Oh,
So it's like-
There's
You're
no
right,
public
sorry.
comment either.
No, it's
you're
okay.
right. Yeah, right, yeah. Oh, we have a motion to, and it's been seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Any additions or deletions to our agenda tonight? Any public comment on the Urban Renewal Agency budget?
How about review again, why it's a separate meeting?
It's a separate
Separate.
agency.
Separate.
The city formed the Urban Renewal Agency, even though it's a city council, it's the same board as a different agency, it's formed under a different statute, and so it's handled as if you look at our financial statements, it's combined, but it's considered a separate agency. Issued the debt, recently we issued the debt in the name of the Urban Renewal Agency, and there's no ties to the city with that urban renewal debt.
Basically, the urban, by the city of Forest Grove having an urban renewal agency district, it allows us to leverage like tax increment dollars to put into the area, the district, revitalize some things with a little bit more flexibility than the city council would have.
Two separate legal entities.
Just like a little.
Good question. All right. Discussion and approval of the 2025-27 URA budget is our next agenda item.
Staff has no changes.
The motion.
Okay. Here I move to approve expenditures for fiscal year 2025 through 2027 proposed biennial in the amount of $3,951,081 and to establish the maximum expenditures for each category as shown on fiscal year 2025-2027 budget summary. Second.
Second, thank you.
Was that you?
Yes.
Are there any change motions anyone would like to make or any discussion? Hearing none. We'll take a vote on the motion that's on the floor. We'll do that by roll call, please.
Michelle Bateman? Yes. Tom Cook?
Yes.
Director Faulkner?
Yes.
Teresa Galvin?
Yes.
Director Gustafson?
Yes.
Mallory Highfield?
Yes.
Carla Kinsey?
Yes.
Director Marshall?
Yes.
Director Martinez?
Yes.
Director Schimmel?
Yes.
Director Valenzuela?
Yes.
URA Chair Renzel?
Yes.
Committee Chair Thomas?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now the tax motion.
Chair, I move to approve for fiscal year 2025-2026 and fiscal year 2026 through 2027, that the budget committee for the Forest Grove Urban Renewal Agency and the board of directors for the Forest Grove Urban Renewal Agency certify to the county assessor for the Forest Grove Urban Renewal Agency plan area for the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes under section 1C, Article 9 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS, Chapter 457.
Second, Councilor Faulkner.
This may seem like a strangely worded motion, but what it's designed to do is to get the maximum property tax off the maximum incremental value increase in the URA area. It's not written like you would see the general fund property.
Motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion, comments? Hearing none, we'll do our final roll call, vote, please.
Michelle Bateman? Yes. Tom Cook?
Yes.
Director Faulkner?
Yes.
Teresa Galvin?
Yes.
Director Gustafson?
Yes.
Mallory Highfield?
Yes.
Carla Kinsey?
Yes.
Director Marshall?
Yes.
Director Martinez?
Yes.
Director Schimmel?
Yes.
Director Valenzuela?
Yes.
URA Chair Wenzel?
Yes.
And Committee Chair Thomas?
Yes. Motion carried unanimously. Thank hereby adjourn this meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee. Thank you all very much.
We're adjourned, like we're done.
We're done.
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 I just want to say thank you to the chair.
Yes.
For leading us through this. I think you better. Big shout out to Paul.
Oh,
yes.
Because 2
Yes.
years on budget, lots of hours,
Yeah.
tons of time,
Huge.
always. And Sally too for helping out. And doing it.
It wouldn't have got done without Sally, trust me.
Right. Thank you, Sally.